Hello and good day, everybody. I am Coach Jay. For those that don't know me, I am an intrapersonal relationship coach, a betrayal trauma practitioner, and much, much more. Because I am a father, I always start my classes with a corny dad joke, and today's is this. What did the triangle say to the circle? You're pointless. Ba-dum-bum. All right, if you can take two deep healing breaths with me, into the nose, out through the mouth, preferably with your eyes closed, but however you feel safe. This is going to calm your nervous system, make your heartbeat just a little slower, telling your brain, your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, all is good in the hood. All right. And by the way, I read my classes because my ADHD will take me on a long trail of talking and unnecessarily if I don't stick to my script. So that's why I read my classes, FYI. Okay. While simple phrases help us know that we want to listen, they really help us to convey a message that we're engaged and we want to get to the root of the problem to help satisfy the overall situation. Conflict has many arenas. It happens at home, it happens in the office, it happens even when we're out and about. I mean, it's even now on Zoom calls, conflict. So really, it's becoming, unfortunately, a regular thing, even in this day post-COVID. Regardless of the setting of the players, the underlying reason for arguments, disagreements, or beefs, if you want to talk like my son, it's usually the same. If you want to learn how to resolve conflict, the first thing you have to do is recognize it, because after all, we cannot change what we don't acknowledge or recognize. It's not necessarily the tone or the body language or specific words, although don't get me wrong, they certainly do play a part, especially when we're involved in the disagreement. It is, however, interpretation. And I say all the time, we read not necessarily what's written, but how we interpret it. What was said doesn't make sense to you, and oftentimes that sets you off into a cascade. Your brain releases cortisol, and you say either I'm going to destroy you, which is fight, or I'm out of here, which is flight. And then there's a bunch of other F ones, freeze, fawn, and some other choice ones. Neither response helps, but we tend to go to the extremes because of our inability to engage in conflict. A lot of people haven't learned proper conflict, and I'm going to give you a very perfect example. I took my family to Jersey a couple days ago, and we went to an IMAX theater. And I paid very good money to get into the museum, very good money to pay for my whole family to watch this 3D IMAX film. And from the time it started, throughout the duration, there was a family behind us that the daughter kept kicking my son's chair, and they were talking incessantly. Those are, I mean, it's common sense, but they're pet peeves for me. Like, people don't work hard and spend a lot of money just so they can hear some stranger's conversation. And so after about the 27th time the daughter kicked my son's chair, my son actually had to move. And so I turned to the little girl and I said, "Oh, my love, can we be careful with kicking the chair?" And all of a sudden the mother was like, "Did she kick you?" Because and I was thinking, whoa, what, like, if somebody addressed my child with that, I would go to my child and say, "Oh yeah, that's kind of disturbing. Let's not, what." Now, if somebody spoke rudely to my child, that's a different story. But I turned out and said, "Hey, my love, let's be careful of kicking chairs." Now, something she should have already known. She was about 8 years old, but since her parents didn't say anything or teach her this, I just was very nice. I said, "My love," and the mother just was, which explains why her daughter behaves the way she does, but that's here neither here nor there. Anyway, but it's how, so again, a lot of conflict disagreements is not necessarily what was said, how it was said, why. It was our interpretation. And some people, no matter what you tell them, means let's go toe to toe, because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to feel wrong. I don't want to, whatever. So hopefully some of this class will help with that. Boning up on our conflict resolution skills is worthwhile, since tension will never go extinct, even in the best relationships. And this could be mother, father, daughter, son, coworker, neighbor, spouse, you name it. Resolving conflict then starts with recognizing that a problem is in the room, and then speaking up with unloaded language. A lot of people love putting in passive aggressive statements and these, disrespectful digs and things like this. So we want to be very, very careful while we're talking. Resolving conflict starts with recognizing that a problem is in the room, and then speaking, like I said, with unloaded language. It's also good to keep a reminder that nothing is a guarantee. Just because controlling somebody else's behavior, you can know yours. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the other person's going to respond in a way. But we can do some things that will, for the most part, influence them to respond to us in a positive way. So regardless, it's smart to have some phrases in our toolbox that can aid you in conflict resolution, whether it's at the workplace, home, or any other arena, such as me when I was at the IMAX, museum the other day. The phrases all work to acknowledge feelings and ensure that others feel heard. That's one of the big things. Listen, we all want to feel heard, so it's nice to make others feel heard as well. The phrases all work to really kind of be a soft place to land when people hear them. Keep in mind that the next time tensions boil over, these are phrases it's good to take out of your toolbox. Now, will they always work? No, very little is ever a guarantee, but they will show the other person that you are at least listening, you're trying, you're attempting not to be the bad person. Okay, let's get to these really quickly. Number one, you're talking to somebody, and if you say the phrase something along the lines of, I really appreciate you being willing to discuss this. Now, why does it work? This is a good conflict resolution phrase for any relationship. Again, neighbor, brother, sister, son, daughter, father, doesn't matter. Because it acknowledges the step that many will not take while engaging. For instance, like in a non-work situation, you can add, I want to have a good time with you. I want to have a good time spending with you. So I do appreciate the fact that you're willing to, listen and spend some time in this. So basically, it takes down some of the emotional inflammation. You're telling the other person, basically, you appreciate their time. You appreciate their investment. So you're psychologically investing in them to want to psychologically invest in you. Number two, a good saying or quote or statement is, tell me a little thing that I can do to help you right now. So many times, especially when we're working past broken trust, we're kind of sick and tired of the broken promises as well. Yes, I'm going to work better on that. I'm going to be more mindful of that. Got it. Will A, B, and C. And then that A never comes. So if somebody says, okay, what can I do? What little thing can I do right now? Now you're immediately seeing immediate changes. And that kind of like inspires and inflames your hope. Now, why does this kind of statement work? Well, mostly for a spouse, maybe even a friend. This comes after the initial saying that, I can see you're upset. Now, since the person usually gets angrier before calming down, the follow-up is even more important, as it brings the situation into the moment and tells the person that you're not leaving, you're not bolting, you're not giving up. You actually want to change and improve so much that you're willing to do something in the moment. And of course, make sure that change happens. Now, if you're on the other side of this, you could even say, something, this is what you can do in this moment to make me feel safe. And then you can share that. You could also tell them after this exchange, moving forward, if we get into these conflicts, these debates, these arguments, these disagreements, whatever you want to call them, could you please ask me what you could do in this moment to make me feel safe? That would help me out a lot. Okay. A next statement is simply, let's clarify. So many times there's misunderstandings. Now, why does this work? Well, whether it's with work or what have you, friction can happen over perceived authority or territory. Those are some of the, I mean, we are all humans that have a natural instinct to want to protect or guard our territory and our authority. So when you say let's clarify, it kind of also helps put each other's eggs in each other's basket, um, evening the playing space, the playing field. So you want to define protocol, timeline, procedure, specify vague terms such as any vague terms, doesn't matter. I can give you examples, but like for instance, one perfect example is soon. Well, soon to one person means 20 minutes. Soon to another means 20 days. So what does soon mean? Make sure you clarify certain things. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is number 4. If anybody's writing down or taking notes, I'm happy to talk with you about this as long as we do A, B, and C afterwards. So for instance, what do I mean? Okay, I'm willing to have this discussion with you, but I want us to hug afterwards. I'm willing to have this discussion with you, but I want to play cards afterwards. I'm willing to have this discussion with you, but we have to decide that we're going to go get ice cream together afterwards. Now, why does this work? Because certain people want to get into certain topics, and unfortunately, for some, especially if they came from a house of chaos or crisis or toxicity or abuse or dysfunction, some of them will do it for the dopamine rush. So mentioning a game acts as like a cleanse. It's like a cleansing afterwards, and it kind of makes somebody invite them into the wrestling ring, for a lack of a better term. So again, I'm happy to talk about this, but we have to vow that we're going to shake hands after. I'm happy to have this conversation, but we have to, do A, B, and C after. And then it also, because nothing ruins a good conversation oftentimes than when two people leave heated and walk in separate directions. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't need their time away after a discussion, because for a lot of people, so even introverts, a heated conflict or discussion really can be depleting. So some people do need, listen, I need my space. I need 20 minutes or I need a couple hours. That's fine. But if you do something that kind of brings both parties together after a disagreement, it helps you to think, you know what, we both walk away a winner. We both listened. This was important to us. We're going to change. Now we just need some separate time to kind of, simmer. All right. Next one. I hear that's important to you, and I'm asking you to consider my perspective. So many times we like to yell and scream, you're not listening to me, and blah, blah, blah. When something very softly as, I hear you, I absolutely hear you, and I hear that it's important to you. I'm simply asking that you consider my perspective. Now, if they won't go for that, you can simply say, could you please hear my perspective? Then after you state your perspective, then after you do, you can go on to, I'm asking you to consider it. But if they won't give you any leniency, clemency, flexibility when you say, I'm asking you to consider my perspective, start with, I'm asking that you just listen to my perspective. Now, one of the reasons this works is fights spiral because people believe that they can only win or lose. So whoever walks away a winner is the winner, which actually, when it comes to like a lot of relationships, to be honest with you, if one person walks away feeling like a winner, both people are losers, or both people lost, not losers, sorry, because relationships are about sacrifice, compromise, negotiation. So don't get me wrong, there are occasions where, one person's dead wrong and one person will walk away feeling a little bit more like victorious. But really, there should be a lot of compromise, negotiation in a relationship. When both people walk away feeling heard, not necessarily agreed with, just heard, valued, validated. That's winning. Next one. I want us to talk even though things might not get resolved. Lots of fights don't get resolved, but you do feel better just simply for being heard. Now, anxiety creates the need for closure. Not every topic can be neatly tied up into a bow, you know. Something that everyone would be better off understanding is that all conflicts, I mean, listen, there's been wars going on for years. Name a random country, there's been wars going on for years, internally and externally. But basically, just by acknowledging this, listen, I know we're not going to solve the world's problems in the next 15 minutes, but I just need to get this off my chest. Could I share something with you and you just sit with it? Could you meditate with it? Could you pray on it? Could you journal about it? Can you think about it? And then let's retable it, in a day or so, blah, blah, blah. All right. Next one, simply OH. It's a non-committal, but you're also realizing that you're not ignoring, which is one of the quickest ways to inflame someone, is to ignore or minimize or respond in a blasé way. So this 2-letter word also kills time to get more in your logical mindset and less in your emotional mindset. Sometimes we want to respond. How many times are you in a heated debate or argument and you're thinking of your response as the other person's talking, which is not cool, because are you actually even listening to what they're saying? Are you listening to respond, or are you listening to understand? No, you're listening to respond. So if you stop for a second and say, oh, that just puts just a little bit of a pause, so your brain can kind of come down and you can think a little bit more logically. Next one. I bet we can agree on 3 things. No, you can't find 3 things, 2 things. And if you can't do 1, but the more the better. Now, why does this work? Because, well, you can't really choose your family. So opposing viewpoints are part of get-togethers. Over time, you listen just to find someone's argument. What is their fundamental need? If somebody's saying they're very, very upset because you never put your dish in the sink after you eat, is it really about the dishes? Because we argue all the time about topics, not issues. The issue might be, I don't feel valued because I keep asking you to do something and you don't listen to me. I don't feel prioritized. I don't feel loved. Nothing to do with the dishes. It's all about the underlying issue. All right. Next one. That was your experience, not mine. And I can't say it was wrong. Now, why does this work? Well, most arguments never leave the sandbox. Wanting attention, wanting affection, not sharing. Those are some of the fundamentals of disagreements and conflicts. You're acknowledging that you can grow up in the same place, or grow up in the same house, or be together in the same house, or learn from one another in a relationship, but that you have very different perspectives, very different viewpoints. Keep in mind, when 2 people come together in a relationship, they're bringing their childhood experiences, their education, their examples, and what feels right to them. Keeping in mind, what feels right isn't always necessarily what is right, but it feels right to them. So it's very important to say, I understand that might be true to you, but it's not true to me. Where can we find common ground here? So you're validating, always validate, but you're also letting them know that's not my experience. That's not how I feel about this situation. And if you are reconciling, then this is good, because it's an opportunity to grow together and learn together. And if you're not reconciling, then this is a good way to either get firm on your beliefs and boundaries, or maybe get a little bit more flexible on your boundaries, not boundaries, on your beliefs, for a potential next relationship. All right, the next one is I can do better. Now, this one is helpful in a lot of ways, but anytime after a conflict, an argument, oftentimes there's a pause. Either both people are tired of arguing, one person said something that hurt the other person, you're argued out, you said all you had to say. And if somebody just says, I can do better, it really, really, really immediately puts a soft mattress in between that conflict. If you also say something along the lines of, I screwed up, immediately that's taking responsibility, taking accountability. I can't tell you, and I'm sure you know, how many times talking to somebody, and if they would simply just take accountability, take responsibility without any excuse, that would help out tremendously. So this saying does help out. And if you need to tell somebody, listen, I just need to hear you taking full responsibility, full accountability, full ownership. We can almost end right there for now, if need be. But my God, you like I can't hear excuses. I need you to be responsible. I need you to take accountability. After that, what happens is that we start looking at the other person as a reasonable person, and we can interact and deal with a reasonable person. We cannot interact and deal with and certainly reconcile with somebody who's unreasonable. All right, let's wrap this up with basically the next statement is, I feel something is weird. I just want to talk about it. Would now be okay. Now, the latter part of this is important. Would now be okay, because even though you want to talk about something, and you should be able to, because anytime you have anything on your mind, you should be able to talk about it. What you're doing is you are empowering the other party to make the decision if they want to come and sit at the discussion table. Now, if they say no, say, okay, when would be a good time? And they're still feeling empowered, they might say, I mean, obviously they might say later or something, and you might have to, hash that out. Well, what does later mean? Because this is important to me. But basically, it's making them feel empowered, so they come to the table feeling empowered. So they'll hopefully give you the respect that you deserve and need during this conversation. So basically, you can't wait too long or jump in it too soon to have a conversation. And again, it's all about making the other person feel empowered, so they come to the table ready to make rational, logical decisions from a compromising, negotiating, give and take perspective. Unless you're dealing with somebody who's impossible, and that's a whole nother class. All right, last one. You've talked about this before, but I really want to understand it. And if this is something you're saying, it could be said the other way around. So basically, you want to dismiss your other party's go-to story, whether that's your friend, family member, spouse, whatever. But at the root is the desire to be heard. Okay. So again, you've talked about this before. I've heard it before. I'm not sure I quite understand it. Could I understand this more thoroughly? And so this is something you would say, or this is something that you would request the other person say to you. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, your partner stepped out of the relationship and you guys are talking. You might want to encourage them to say, you know what, I've heard you say this before, how I hurt you. I don't think I've gotten it. I don't think I understood the gravity. I finally want to understand it now. I mean, just hearing that almost kind of relieves a little bit of pressure. This announces that, you want them to listen, but that you're ready to listen. You want them to listen. You really want to move forward. It's a move forwarding statement. This means that you're going to let the other person talk, or they're going to let you talk, which really might be all that's needed. I mean, sometimes, especially when it comes to a conflict, what's needed is just to be heard, to feel valued, to feel validated, to feel heard. That's all. There's probably times, and if not, you will probably experience this. There are times when, at the end of a long rant, discussion, disagreement, there's really nothing somebody could say, but just the mere fact that they sat down, or they looked at you, or they nodded their head, or they agreed. My God, that's like 90% sometimes. if even if they'll say, well, anything else, no, as long as you heard me, we're good. So again, these are just some statements that if you want to correspond and have a good give and take conversation, if it can happen, not always will, if it can happen, these are your best chances that they will.